Hello everybody and welcome to this revision video, which again is covering a topic within theme 1, the first topic, which is called Nature of Economics. Now the topic which we will be looking at in this video is going to be 1.1.4, which is called Production Possibility Frontiers, and then 1.1.5, which is called Specialisation and the Division of Labour. Okay, so it's this one here, 1.1.4 and 1.1.5. Right, so first of all, what I would like you to do, please, can you jot down the answers to question 1? So this is simply some definitions which you should already have a good understanding of. So please have a go at defining outputs, inputs, production, productivity, GDP, and economic growth. If you can now hit pause, and then once you've put down your answers, please click play. Right, okay, so let's try and get a head around what a production possibility frontier diagram is. Now you've got here a set of axes, and what I've plonked on the axes are consumer goods and capital goods. Now consumer goods are household goods and services. So these are products which are sold to households. So this will include the sum of all the cars, computers, TVs, clothes, food, holidays, etc. that are produced for households within the UK economy. On the other axis, we have capital goods, and these are goods used by businesses to produce goods and services. So this is mainly machinery. So we're looking here at production line equipment. We're looking here at the machines that are used to make cars, TVs, computers, etc. Goods used in classrooms to provide education for young people. Now, the idea is the PPF, the Production Possibility Frontier line, it represents the maximum number of goods and services that an economy is able to produce with an efficient use of its factors of production. So what we should know then is that within every economy we have a certain amount of land, labour, capital and enterprise, and these are the inputs used to produce goods and services. This line therefore represents the maximum output possible with those factors of production. So the idea would be that bigger economies such as China and America will have a much bigger production possibility frontier than the UK because they have more factors of production. Smaller economies, let's say Switzerland, Holland, Belgium, etc., have got less factors of production, which means their production possibility frontier will be smaller than that of the UK economy. Okay, now if we were to operate on the production possibility frontier line, what it would mean is that we are using our resources in the most efficient way possible to produce goods and services. Okay, so what it shows along the line then is different production possibilities available. So if the economy was to produce more consumer goods, it would mean that we're capable of producing fewer capital goods. Clearly, if we produce more capital goods, we'd have to move resources away from making consumer goods towards making more capital goods in the economy. Right, okay, now what we can use a production possibility frontier therefore is to show different opportunity costs. So let's imagine that we start at point A. Now we can therefore use point A to work out how many capital goods we can make in the economy and how many consumer goods we can make. So at point A, we can see that we are making CA1 capital goods, and we're using the rest of the resources to make CO2 consumer goods. If we were to move from point A to point B, it would mean that resources, so land, labour, capital and enterprise, would be a little bit moved away from consumer goods towards capital goods. This would therefore allow us to make more capital goods, but that would mean that we can make fewer consumer goods. So if we move from A to B, we would gain CA1 to CA2 capital goods, but we would be sacrificing CO2 to CO1 consumer goods. Obviously, move from point B to point A, we would be sacrificing some capital goods, so CA2 to CA1, but we would gain CO1 to CO2 consumer goods. Right, now what we can do now, we can be a bit more mathematical about this. On the previous slide, we use letters. So when we don't know what the numbers actually are, we do what mathematicians do, and we use letters instead. Here what we can see is a more numerical example, and we can use this to work out actual opportunity costs. Now, a big part of economics is looking at a word we call marginal, which means the additional. So again, let's imagine we start off at point A. What we can now see is that we are using our factors of production at the moment to produce 38 capital goods. The rest of the resources are being used to produce 125 consumer goods. Now, if we were to move from point A to point B, what we can now see is that we are gaining from 38 to 110 capital goods. So move from A to B, some factors of production, so some land, some labour, some capital and enterprise, will be moved towards capital goods, and we can now produce an additional, so a marginal, 72 capital goods. Now, to produce those extra 72 capital goods, though, we've had to sacrifice the difference from 125 to 37 consumer goods. So when we go from A to B, we gain 72 capital goods, but we've got to sacrifice the production of 88 consumer goods. With the logic being, if we're moving resources away from consumer goods to capital goods, well, that means that there's less resources available to make consumer goods in the economy. So what we can do, we can work out the opportunity cost here. Now, we've got this very simple formula to work it out. What is sacrificed divided by what is gained. So when we move from A to B, we sacrifice 88 consumer goods, but we then gain 72 capital goods. And this gives us an opportunity cost of 1.22. So this therefore means that for every additional capital good we gain from A to B, we've got to sacrifice 1.22 consumer goods. Obviously went from the other way, from B to A. So from B, we'll produce 110 capital goods. To A, we'll be able to produce 38 capital goods. We gain the additional consumer goods from 37 up to 125. So the formula this time would be from B to A, we sacrifice this time 72 capital goods to gain 88 consumer goods. So this time the formula would be the reverse, 72 divided by 88 to work out the opportunity cost. Okay, so it's a really, really good, effective, simple diagram to work out opportunity costs. Right, based on what you've just seen then, what I would now like you to do is to have a go at defining and drawing the following, please. So define the term PPF, explain the difference between consumer and capital goods, define the term marginal, use a PPF diagram to explain the concept of opportunity cost, and then finally, what is the formula used to calculate opportunity cost? So if you can now hit pause, write down your answers. Once your answers are down, if you can hit play. If you wanted to check your answers, you could go back to the previous PowerPoint slides. So if you can now hit pause, please. Right, everyone. I've got here a slide which shows an overview of production possibility frontiers. What we should know then is if we operate at any point on the line, so B in this diagram here, this would be an efficient use of factors of production. So any B point on here means that we are using resources in the most efficient way possible to produce goods and services. If we operate inside the line, this would be inefficient. So all these point A's would show inefficiency in the economy. Now what we have here is something that we call spare capacity. It would mean that the country's factors of production are not being used in the most efficient way possible. And that would mean if we were to boost efficiency, we could move production towards the line and therefore operate on one of these different B points here. Now, cause of inefficiency could just be unemployment in the economy. If you've got unemployment, it means that labour is not always being used to produce goods and services. Someone not working is not producing output for the economy. It could just be people are working inefficiently, so people's skills are not being used in the best way possible. So people are working in jobs not matching their skills. That would be inefficiency. There could be capital that is not being used in the best way. So some machinery might not be deployed in the right way, or it might not be getting used at all. There might be infrastructure that is not being utilised across the country, or some land resources might be sat idle and therefore not producing goods and services. Now, point C would be unattainable output points. Okay, so if you're operating on the C points, that would mean that you are working beyond the capacity of the economy. So realistically, the only way to get to point C would be to move the production possibility frontier outwards over time. So everyone, B would be an efficient use of factors of production. A is inefficient, C is unattainable. The country lacks the resources to get to these different points here. Right, we're now going to think about how we can use production possibility frontiers to show economic growth. Now, what we should be happy with that the PPF, it measures the maximum number of goods and services that can be produced with an efficient use of resources. If we don't operate efficiently, it means that we are producing less output than what we would like to in the economy. Now, let's imagine the economy is currently operating at point A. So that means we're producing CO1 consumer goods and CA1 capital goods. If I added up the value of all these different outputs produced, it would show me the GDP of the economy. So at point A, the GDP would be the value of the consumer goods, CO1, and the value of the capital goods, CA1, added together. Obviously, if I divide this by the population, it would give me the GDP per capita, which would show me how many goods and services on average that people can consume across the economy. Now, if the economy was to move from point A to point B, it would mean the economy has experienced actual economic growth. This will mean that the value of the goods and services produced in the economy has increased. Okay, so in the diagram, we can see that the production of consumer goods and capital goods increases when we move from A to B. This will be a physical increase in the output of the economy. What you can see then is that the amount of spare capacity has fallen. So at point A, the gap between A and the PPF is huge. When you move to B, the gap has got smaller. So A to B, everyone, would show actual economic growth. It would mean that resources are starting to be used more efficiently across the economy. The good thing about moving from A to B would mean that there's more GDP, which means the GDP per capita will be increasing. And if the GDP per capita is growing, it should mean that people can access more goods and services and therefore have better economic welfare. In this slide, everyone, we can show something we call potential economic growth. So when the PPF moves outwards, it means that those previously unattainable output points have now become attainable. The PPF moves outwards because of an improvement or an increase in a country's factors of production. So if we go from 1 to 2, it would mean that the country's land, labour, capital and enterprise has either got better or it's increased. And if you've got a bigger factor endowment, so more resources available, it means the country's capacity to produce has increased. Now, over time across our economy in the last few hundred years, the PPF has constantly moved outwards. And the logic would be if the PPF moves outwards through potential economic growth, it means that you can have more actual economic growth. And that will therefore lead to a better improvement in economic welfare over time. Right, okay, just a bit of a pause thing then now, please. Can you please write down these questions and jot down the answers? So if you can write these down, please. So A, use a PPF diagram to explain unattainable output points, efficient output points, and inefficient output points, please. If you can hit pause, jot down your answers, and then click play, please. Right, now, what makes a PPF move outwards could be any of these different things here. So remember, when the PPF moves outwards, it would be an example of potential economic growth. And it's about more or better factors of production. Now, it could just be that we've discovered more land resources. So if an economy discovers new quantities of oil or gas within their economy, then it means that the capacity to produce has increased. It could be that there's been new production methods discovered that boost productivity, that maybe there's better machinery, so better capital available through technological progress. And this could be down to, better mining resources that allow us to access deeper oil that we couldn't access before. It could just be there's better technology on production lines, which means that the output per worker is now higher than what it was before. It could be there's better infrastructure across the country, which means that we can move things around from A to B smoother, more quickly. It could be better human capital. Now, human capital is the quality of the workforce. If we improve the skills of workers or make them fitter and healthier, then people genuinely become more productive. A more productive workforce is more able to produce output than a less productive workforce. Or it could just be an increase in the workforce. So if there is immigration coming into the country, it means your economy has got better skills and more people, and is therefore able to increase its production of goods and services. Now, it's worth noting, though, that PPFs can sometimes move inwards. So this would be negative potential economic growth. So if the PPF moves inwards, it means the country's resources have either deteriorated in quality or we've just got fewer of them. Now, of course, this could be natural disasters. So if we have a natural disaster, this could destroy infrastructure and other capital. So, for example, in some countries that experience earthquakes or tsunamis, these things can wipe out infrastructure and factories and machinery, even kill people. And if these things happen, the ability to produce output in the economy will fall. Now, the next one, depletion of natural resources. Well, if you're using up all those non-renewable resources in your country, your oil, coal, gas, etc., then it means that your capacity to produce output in the future will unfortunately deteriorate. Reduction in the size of workforce. Well, for some economies, they might have an aging population where the number of people working falls. It could be they have emigration where people leave their country to earn more money elsewhere. Well, if you've got a smaller workforce, again, it means that your capacity to produce has fallen. The final one I've put down is deep recessions. A recession would be when an economy's GDP falls for at least 6 months. Now, you tend to find that when you have recessions, people become unemployed, there's less funds available for education, for healthcare, businesses don't invest in capital. Now, this leads to them resources losing quality. So if you don't invest in capital, it loses efficiency. If workers are unemployed, they lose skills. If there's less healthcare, less education, then again, the quality of the workforce will fall over time. And if these things happen for a sustained period of time, it could mean the PPF starts to move inwards. Right. What I would now like to do, please, again, is to pause and to think about these questions here. So please write down these questions and the answers. So explain 3 possible causes of an outward shift in a country's PPF. And then B, what do you think are the main benefits for a country of an outward shift in its production possibility frontier? Right, please hit pause, and once you've put down your answers, hit play. Right, now the last thing I want to show you linked to production possibility frontiers is something that we call a non-parallel PPF shift. So look at the first diagram here. Again, we can see potential economic growth because the PPF has moved outwards from 1 to 2, but it's moved out more in favour of capital goods than consumer goods. Now, this could be because improvements in capital suits capital goods more than consumer goods. So if we have a huge technological progress which allows us to produce a bigger quantity of capital goods, then it will benefit capital goods but have a very minimal impact on consumer goods. The other way around as well, we can see in the second diagram that this time PPF has moved outwards more in favour of consumer goods than capital goods. And this could just be that the improvement or the increase in resources better benefits consumer goods than capital goods. So don't assume that PPFs will always move out in a parallel fashion. They can move out in all sorts of weird and wonderful ways, as shown in these diagrams. Right. The next mini topic which I want to cover in this video is looking at something we call specialisation and division of labour. Now, the gentleman in the top right-hand corner of this screen is a very famous economist called Adam Smith, and he wrote a book called The Wealth of Nations. And one of his main theories that he talked about was something called specialisation and division of labour. Now, specialisation is the idea that individuals, firms, regions and whole economy should focus production on what they are best at. In other words, people should produce what they can produce in the most efficient way possible. And this is known as the absolute advantage theory. So people producing, or regions or countries or firms producing what they are most efficient at. So the idea would be that if an individual is more skilled to becoming a doctor, they should become a doctor, and then do very little else in terms of employment. If someone is most skilled at being a teacher, again, that is what they should do. If an economy's resources are best suited towards tea production, that is what they should do. If another economy's got the best resources available to produce TVs, then that is what they should do in their country. And the idea would be that countries, firms, regions, individuals would then trade what they're best at for what other countries or individuals or firms are best at making. So if someone's a doctor, they should generate all their income from being a doctor and then trade the money that they earn from being a doctor for all the other things that they then need to meet their wants and needs. Now, the logic behind this would be that if you're a doctor, you can generate the most money and most efficiency doing your job. You then use that income to buy the efficient output produced by a farmer, a TV company, a house building company. So you only do what you are best at. So when we think about this, then individuals, we all specialise. So we all gain the skills to work in one particular career and we stick to it. Businesses will often specialise. So if you look at Apple, they make technological products. Supermarkets sell food. Car factories make cars. Regions specialise. So within the UK, we used to have hubs of textile manufacturing, steel manufacturing in Sheffield, pot making in Stoke-on-Trent. We now have finance based in London, and then whole economies might specialise. So some economies across the world, they literally export mainly tea or coffee or other natural resources. Now, what this leads to is what we call interdependence between economic agents. So the idea would be if you're only making a small number of goods and services, you then have to rely on other people to make other things that you will need to meet your wants and needs. Now, we can also view specialisation in terms of something we call division of labour. And this is where we break down the production process into very small, simple, repetitive tasks. So this could be on a production line, for example, where a worker on a car production line might literally add the wheel, add a particular bolt, and that is one small task they complete over and over again. It could be in McDonald's, somebody that their simple job is to cook the burgers. Someone else's job might be to toast the bread buns or cook the chips, etc. So that means that no individual is making a complete product. They're working on one small aspect of the production of a particular good or service. Right, now you've got here the benefits and the drawbacks of specialisation and division of labour. So remember, specialisation is where individuals, firms, regions and whole economies focus on the production of a small number of goods and services based on what they are most efficient at. Now look at the benefits of it then. If you're producing what you are most efficient at making, then it reduces opportunity cost problems. So you're not wasting time producing things that you're not very good at. You focus on what you are best at. And the logic would be if you're doing what you are most efficient at making, then it leads to more output. And it would make it cheaper to produce those particular goods and services, which would hopefully mean lower prices for everybody else. Drawbacks of specialisation would be what I would call putting all your eggs in one basket. So if you are specialised to work in one industry, or if you're a business that is based in one industry or a region or a whole economy, if that industry enters decline, then those people would lose their economic welfare. So if you're working in steel production, or a business that works in steel production, or a whole region that works in steel production, a bit like Sheffield used to, if that industry falls into decline, then it can depress living standards for everyone that works in that industry, lives in that area, but also the businesses that operate in that industry as well. So that could lead to, incomes falling, unemployment, and people being unable to move their skills into new industries. So, for example, when steel production fell in Sheffield, then those individuals, those businesses would struggle to move into new growth industries. So where I come from in Doncaster, for example, we used to have a huge coal mining industry. Well, when that industry declined, it meant that this had a big bad impact on the town. So living standards fell for a lot of people in the town. All the businesses that worked in that industry would shut down. Their profits disappeared. But also the individuals that worked in those industries lost their livelihood. And it led to a big collapse in economic welfare within that region. And the idea being that the people that worked in that industry were so specialised in coal production that when new industries grew linked to hospitality and catering, those people lacked the skills to move into those new growth industries. Now, division of labour then, what are the benefits of this? Well, if people are working on one aspect of production, then it means they're doing that one job over and over and over again. And that repetition would hopefully mean that workers become really, really good at it. They become really, really efficient. Now, if they become really efficient, it will help the business lower costs. But also on top of that as well, if we're training someone to do one small aspect of production, it reduces training costs. So in McDonald's, technically, if your job is to cook burgers, you don't never have to be trained on how to make a complete burger. All you're doing is cooking the meat. So we don't have to train you on how to dress the bread buns, how to toast the bread buns, wrap them, etc., sell them on the tills. So it saves the business a fortune in training costs. Now, on top of that as well, there's no waste of time. So if you're only doing one aspect of production, you don't have to spend time walking to the next stage in production. And that is going to be saving the business again more money, which can lead to lower costs and maybe even help the business lower prices. Drawbacks of it though, workers lack flexibility. So if your one job is to add a wheel to a car on a production line making a particular model of car, well, if that's all you can do, then it means the business can no longer deploy you to work on other aspects of production. So if people are off sick or we lose workers in one area, we can't bring workers from other aspects of production to carry on production of cars. In McDonald's, if you're only trained to cook the meat, so what if the guy that cooks the bread, toasts the bread buns is off sick? What if the person that works on the till is off sick or leaves their job? We can't bring people across to do different aspects of production. Now, on top of that as well, it's boring. If you're doing one simple job over and over and over again, then you tend to find that workers become poorly motivated because of the boring, repetitive nature of the job that they're completing. And if this happens, then again, people suffer from poor motivation. Right, now, these are the last few questions I'd like to think about, please. So again, if you can jot down these questions, put down your answers, and if you want to check your answers, please go back through the slides to make sure that you've got the right answers, please. Right, hit pause, write them down, and then, guys, once you've done that, that'll be the end of the video. So thank you very much.